From advertising to software as a service to data.
Across all of our programs and clients, we've seen a 55 to 65% open rate.
Getting brands authentically integrated into content performs better than TV advertising.
Typical lifespan of an article is about 24 to 36 hours.
If we're reaching out to the right person with the right message and a clear call to action, then it's just a matter of timing.
Welcome to the MarTech Podcast, a Ben J. Schaap LLC production. In this podcast, you'll hear the stories of world-class marketers that use technology to drive business results and achieve career success. We'll unearth the real-world experiences of some of the brightest minds in the marketing and technology space so you can learn the tools, tips, and tricks they've learned along the way. Now here's the host of the MarTech Podcast, Benjamin Shapiro.
Welcome to Analytics Week on the MarTech Podcast. This week, we're going to do a deep dive into a subject matter that's critically important to marketers in every industry, business, and channel of marketing: analytics. Each day this week, we're going to publish an episode that covers how you can better capture, manage, and understand your business using data. Joining us for Analytics Week is Jenn Sturgill, who is the founder of Analytics Angels, an analytics agency that helps businesses better extract and understand the information that drives them. Prior to founding Analytics Angels, Jenn worked at Microsoft and a handful of other agencies and consulting firms before branching out on her own. Jenn has a wealth of information to share related to data capture, management, and reporting, and today we're going to start off Analytics Week by talking about the foundation of data capture. Here's the first installment of Analytics Week with Jenn Sturgill from Analytics Angels. Jenn, welcome to the MarTech Podcast.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. It's good to reconnect. And let's start off by introducing you to our audience. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and about Analytics Angels?
Of course. I have been in the marketing technology space since probably 2010, when marketing automation became a thing. Marketo started to be a little bit more prolific with some startup companies I worked with in San Francisco. And even before that, after graduating UC Berkeley, I just got really interested in marketing tech, Google Analytics and the Google Suite. And I started being interested in AdWords and how that worked. And due to my engineering and statistics background, I was always interested in where is all of this data actually going? We create so much data every day in every business. And really, it's about how to not make that overwhelming and how to actually glean insights from the data that you have. So that's a bit of my background. I started Analytics Angels in 2015 to help organizations understand how to properly use marketing technology and data within their organization. Even with all the tools at your disposal these days, many companies still face challenges with data governance, MarTech implementation practices, effective full funnel reporting, dashboard functionality. There's just so many different technologies out there. And how do you properly use these? And how do you actually properly track and tag what data you need to collect? Once you have that data, there's always the question of, now what do we do with it? So that's a little bit about me and reason why I got Analytics Angels started. I just found this need working at the agencies after I moved from San Francisco to Seattle, working with some marketing agencies and other corporations. There's this missing need. So that's why I started Analytics Angels.
I find analytics implementation to be simple in theory and complicated in practice. So what I want to do is break down this week. We're going to spend 10 to 15 minutes talking about a different topic each day. And as I mentioned in the intro, today we're going to talk about data capture. Can you give me the basics of what's the right way to capture data to set yourself up for success when you get into storage and analytics?
Depending on what industry you're in, you want to think about what kind of business questions are you trying to answer? And what kind of information do I need to receive in order to answer those business questions? If you're trying to get a return on marketing investment via a specific channel, or just at least have some transparency into that channel, are they giving us any lift? Are we actually reducing our ad spend on that particular opportunity close? To even start, you need to know somewhat of those objectives. Starting out with knowing your objective first and what your business questions are is probably point one. And understanding which different tools you have already in your business. So knowing your marketing tech stack, Basically, just knowing those different tools, how comprehensive they are. Are you using them to the full of their capabilities in order to track the data you need to answer those business questions?
So I think you bring up an interesting part. To effectively do data capture, you need to understand what questions you're trying to answer. And in theory, you should know that if you're running an e-commerce business, you're looking at your cost per acquisition and trying to convert that into a comparison between LTV, and then you're getting your profitability, right? But what you might not know is what are the channels that are going to be successful? What are some of the data sources? So how do you set up a broad enough net with data capture without having it be overwhelming or just excessive?
So for those business questions, you have to kind of put yourself in the measurement framework. So what you want to do with your organization is meet with the cross-functional teams, marketing ops, sales ops, just marketing, and you want to meet with IT and understand what they have and what they need to get to that solution. And then you need to think about, okay, well, what are my key performance indicators? Like you were just saying, LTV, or if you're doing account-based marketing, for instance, you want to see your ROAS on those top tier accounts. So what KPIs and metrics and dimensions do you need along the way in order to get to that answer? So then what you do is you understand, okay, you go through the exercise of talking to these different cross-functional teams to understand what information they need to act to move the business forward and what insights they need. You then have those metrics and dimensions and KPIs, and those are the kind of calculated measures that you will need to collect in, say, your data lake.
I think you bring up a good point that when you're thinking about what data to capture, you need to look at the sources, not only from an analytics perspective, but you also need to work with your cross-functional teams to understand what questions they're trying to accomplish. So as marketers, a lot of the times, I feel like in earlier stage startups or growth stage companies, the marketers end up being the end consumer and analyst of a lot of data, but it's the engineering team that's making the decisions on what to capture and where it comes from. Any advice on how to best partner or understand what decisions the engineering team is making as they're setting up infrastructure to capture data?
As a consultant, at least, anytime you're approaching a new client or new project, you want to get to know what their actual pain points are. And that can't just come from engineering and it can't just come from IT. Getting kind of like a bird's eye view idea of what's going on in the business from each team, and then kind of bridging that gap as a firsthand liaison. And then maybe over time, as you build relationships with each leader in each of these groups and each of these teams, you'll be able to pass off some of that and then get them talking to each other. But I think always in the beginning, you want to be kind of an advocate for bridging the gap of communication. Because what you find often, at least what I've found, or what we've found in Analytics Angels, is a lot of these teams don't talk to each other. They do their reporting in all different kinds of ways. They're collecting all different kinds of data in different kinds of ways. Reporting looks different. Their KPIs are different. And so there's not really a hub of communication and a nucleus of a measurement strategy. So you have to think of it as almost getting into like a transformation of their company with data culture.
It's an interesting thing. And you mentioned data culture. Like I said, as a marketer, one of the problems that I've seen is you don't understand what data has been captured. So when you're the end consumer, you're then going back and saying, well, I want to see these different metrics. So I think an important point that you bring up is that when you're doing your analytics infrastructure, when you're building the strategy for what you're going to collect, communicating with the rest of your team is incredibly important. Understanding how the infrastructure is being put together, what business problems you're trying to solve, and communicating that to the engineering team, who then is building the infrastructure to be able to capture your data, really makes a difference in the long run.
It does, Ren. The more people that are involved, the better things will transform. Having a measurement strategy that everyone can refer to with clear and concise language, with quantifiable performance targets, that's going to help create a platform that helps the organizations work towards a common goal. It's much more crisp for engineering and IT to have that to refer to, and having everyone contribute to that, because then you can help bolster credibility and encourage more leaders to join the transformation.
Okay, I think that's a great stopping point for today. And that wraps up this episode of the MarTech Podcast. Thanks to Jenn for joining us. If you'd like to learn more of Jenn's tips for building great reporting, we're going to publish an episode every day this week, so hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and check back with us tomorrow morning when we'll be discussing best practices for data capture and storage. If you can't wait until our next episode and you'd like to learn more about Jenn and her business, you can go to Analytics Angels, analytics with an S, angels with an S.com. If you're a subscriber to the MarTech Podcast, thank you for being a member of our community. If you have questions, comments, or you'd like to be a guest on our show, feel free to click the Contact Us link in the show notes or reach out on Twitter or on LinkedIn. The company handle is Ben J. Shap LLC, and my personal handle is Ben J. Shap, that's BenJShap. If you haven't subscribed yet and you want a weekly stream of marketing and technology knowledge in your podcast feed, in addition to the rest of Analytics Week, we've got some great episodes lined up over the next few weeks. So hit the subscribe button in your podcast app and we'll be back in your feed tomorrow. Okay, that's it for today, but until next time, my advice is to just focus on keeping your customers happy.